Today we will be looking at bankruptcy filing trends by chapter in the state of West Virginia. To do this, we have about a dozen charts showing bankruptcy activity in the state going back to 1990. All this filing data comes from the Administrative Office of the United States Courts. Now, this first chart shows total filings by year in the state since 1990. During that time, there have been about 170,000 cases filed in West Virginia. From 1990 to 1995, filings were running around 4,000 a year. This jumped up quite a bit in 96, 97. So from 97 to 2000, we were up around 8,500 a year. And then early 2000, over 10,000 per year. There's a big surge in filings in 2005, the year prior to bankruptcy reform. Then a huge drop-off, 83% the next year, so filings fell down to around 3,000. And that was both a bigger surge and a bigger drop-off than most other states saw. Filings rebounded somewhat by 2009, but still were well below where they were prior to bankruptcy reform, only about half, and then have fallen back down to lower than they were in 1990, and only about 1/3 of where they were in the years prior to bankruptcy reform. Now this chart shows, or map shows, filings relative to population from the period 1990 to 2015. The red states have the very highest bankruptcy rates, and particularly the Southeast, and Tennessee is the perennial leader in filings. Blue are more in the average range, and yellow are very light, and particularly states in the Northeast have very low bankruptcy rates. Over this period of time, West Virginia has been about 14% below average in their filings relative to population. Looking at it year by year, there have really been three periods. I would say that in the 1990s, the bankruptcy rate in West Virginia was about 24% below average. From 2000 2005, it was well above average, about 15 to 20% above average most years. And then in recent years, particularly 2010 to 2015, the rate has been about 40% below average. So, prior to reform, West Virginia had a fairly high bankruptcy rate, and now it is quite low. Looking at Chapter 7 filings per year, and this follows the same general pattern as total filings. Early 1990s, around 3,000 to 4,000 per year. Big jump up through the late 1990s, and continued into the 2000s, where filings got over 10,000 prior to bankruptcy reform. Big jump in 2005, and 85% drop in 2006. Some rebound as the recession was coming, but even there is well below where it was in the years prior to bankruptcy reform. And now filings have dropped down to under 3,000, lower than it was back in 1990, and only about a quarter of where filings were in 2003 and 2004, just prior to bankruptcy reform. This chart shows Chapter 11 filings in the state, and there was a drop-off in the early 1990s, and that happened pretty much everywhere. Since then, or from 94 to about 2005, filings were right around 50 per year. The one exception was 2002, but I think the Anchor Coal case had a lot of related cases, and that pushed filings up. In recent years, around 40 per year has been the more typical, a little bit higher during the recession. And it looks like West Virginia is on track for 40 or 50 again this year. This chart shows Chapter 13 filings by year. You can see that less dramatic changes up and down compared to Chapter 7s or Chapter 11s. Basically running around 500 per year most years, and a very flat chart, which is unusual in bankruptcy because filings almost never are flat anywhere. But the Chapter 13 activity in the state has been fairly consistent for at least 25 years. Looking at the percent of cases that are filed is Chapter 13. Nationwide, the red line here, has been right around 30% since 1990, with some disruption just before and after bankruptcy reform, but most years were right in the 30% range. In West Virginia, they've been close to 10%. From the mid 90s to 2005, were more in the 5% range, and since 2006 have been in the 10 to 15% range. So the proportion of cases that are Chapter 13s is just much lower in West Virginia than in most other states. This next chart shows the unemployment rate in West Virginia by quarter, and this kind of serves as a proxy of kind of how the economy has gone. And from, say, 2007 to 2013, the unemployment rate in the state was actually just a little bit lower than the national average. For the last couple of years, as the national situation has gotten better, West Virginia seems to be kind of stuck in the 6 to 7% range, and so they now have one of the higher rates nationwide. But, say, during the recession, West Virginia kept below 9% through this period, where the national average got up to just about 10% in 2009, 2010. Now, filings peaked most recently nationwide in September 2010, and since then have gone down 49% nationwide. Very comparable in West Virginia, where the filings are down by about half. In the Northern District, the decline has been about 55%, Southern District about 46%, but both of them are really close to the national average. You can see that most of the adjoining states, and really throughout the Southeast, the rate of decline has been a lot lower, generally under 40% since the peak, where the biggest declines have been in the Northeast, particularly New England, and in the Southwest. And these southwestern states were very, very hard hit during the recession, so filings went way up by 2010 and have come way back down. But West Virginia has been pretty average in this time. Looking at it quarter by quarter, you can see that the biggest declines in West Virginia, the blue columns here, were in 2011, 2012, where filings were falling around 20% quarter over quarter, compared to in the 10 to 15% range for nationwide. Since then, the declines in West Virginia have been fairly light, most quarters being less than 10%. And now in 2016, filings are actually up. This chart shows the first 6 months of the year, and reds are the states that have increased. And if we looked at this just for 2014 or any year since 2011, there wouldn't be any red state, because every filings were going down everywhere. But now we're starting to see a number of states showing modest increases, including West Virginia. Third quarter filings were up 11% over last year. So I think West Virginia, we expect to see filings go up slightly nationwide, and West Virginia seems to be kind of leading the way on that. Overall, for the projection, I see about maybe 3,500 cases filed in the state this year, modest increases in the coming years. I don't see any return to the 10,000 or more filings per year that West Virginia saw from 2001 to 2004, unless another recession comes on or a new type of bankruptcy reform legislation. Well, that concludes our look at bankruptcy filings in West Virginia. For more statistical information and other information on bankruptcy, be sure to visit the newsroom section of the ABI website at www.abi.org.